We are at a crucial moment now. I hate to say that because every year we say about Israel, we are at a crucial moment. But seriously, Israel is on a crossroad. And I think that the Oslo Agreement is the worst thing that happened to Israel since the birth of the state, the Jewish state of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Now it turned into, they say, the two-state solution, but actually we're talking about the Oslo Agreement. What we did is, we brought in a Trojan horse. We got Arafat, who was 3,000 kilometers away in Tunisia, and told him, come over and make peace with us. We did not realize at the time, when we say we, I mean the Israeli government. Because part of the Israeli public, and I belong to that part, from the very beginning, we were against the Oslo Agreement, and we foresaw what this agreement is going to bring to us, the Israelis, and the Jews all over the world. It was a mistake that not many countries could have withstood them, because we brought in a Trojan horse with no boundaries, a situation whereby there is no going back. In fact, it was something like the law of return of the Palestinians, because when we made the Oslo Agreement, we had something like 100,000 terrorists come into the Eretz Israel or Israel. That is from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. And one could see that soon afterwards, there were buses being blown up. I mean, the buses started blowing up in 1995. And the Oslo Agreement was in in September 1993, very soon after that. That is very soon after Arafat landed over in the state of Israel. This situation, for the first time in the history of Israel, brought up the question whether Israel has a future. We never had this questioning, and I can speak from my own experience, whether Israel is going to survive or not. But for the first time, the Oslo Agreement started bringing up this question. Not only the Arabs thought about this, but the Jews started talking about it. And many told me, we don't think Israel is going to survive in 20 to 25 years. So the Oslo Agreement was the countdown for the destruction of the state of Israel. I can tell you that also. I can give you an example. I was working very closely with a representative of the Adenauer Foundation in Israel. And he brought in many people. He also asked me to send people to Germany to see, to have more friendship. And he told me, you can't imagine what's happening. So many Jews are asking for German nationality, citizenship. Jews started looking for insurance. They started asking for other nationalities. If anybody was a descendant of a German or a Hungarian or a Czech, they went to the embassies and wanted, for the first time, they started asking for nationality, for citizenship. This never happened before. So this, what's called the two-state solution or the Oslo Agreement, brought a great change in Israel. There was always Labour, Likud, but they were going together on the same road. Suddenly, part of this nation, part of the state of Israel, part of the Jews, suddenly went left. So now there was a dichotomy. There was a situation whereby there was a lot of hatred because the left thought that the right is not allowing them to finally arrive to peace. And the right thought that the left is going crazy. It's going into a situation whereby there is no return, no coming back, no going back. So there was a lot of tension within the Jewish population in the state of Israel. And many times, the leftists would embrace the Palestinians and not shake hands with the right, with their brothers. I can tell you that when Rabin died, Arafat was embraced by Leah Rabin, his wife. Was embraced. And when Netanyahu wanted to come and visit her, she said, I don't want to see this man. So you can see the tension, the way it was. But I'll tell you what the Oslo Agreement did to Israel. First and foremost, suddenly Israel became Goliath. And the Palestinians became the underdog. The whole world forgot that there are 5.5 million Jews living amongst 250 million Arab Muslims who don't want to see Israel there. So we were the underdog. And the press was against us because we were the underdog. And when we were fighting in defense, they said we were attacking them. So this is one thing that is that changed the whole picture. Before we were the underdog, we had 7 Arab countries, states, armies. But now we have terrorists, which are more dangerous than states, than armies. And yet we were the Goliath, the strong. They see our tanks, and they see the Arab Palestinian who throws the stone. But with a stone you can kill people. With a stone you can frighten people. I don't know whether any of you had any experience of a stone being thrown on his car or her car. I can tell you, it's like a bomb. I had stones thrown in my car. And it is frightening. And when the stone hits the head, it's like a bullet. So, this is one thing that has changed. The other thing that has changed is that suddenly Palestine stopped being just an area. Palestine became a state. You know that the Jews were the only people who offered the Palestinians a state. Now we speak about Palestinians. I don't know whether anybody knows what a Palestinian is.
A Jew.
Is a man who was born in Palestine, a Palestinian. Like a man who was born in the United States. Is someone who has a Palestinian passport a Palestinian? Golda Meir always said, I am a Palestinian. Here, I have a Palestinian passport. Is the Jewish Agency for Palestine a Palestinian entity? Is the Jerusalem Post, which was once called the Palestinian Post, a Palestinian newspaper? This whole thing of Palestinians was born in 1964. Before that, there was no nation called Palestine. And there was no state called Palestine. And Jerusalem was never the capital of any state since 4,000 years ago. And yet, a nation which was formed 40, 50 years ago says, we want Jerusalem. And we put them in the same par as we. We who have 650 times Jerusalem in the Bible, we speak to them about Jerusalem. We want to divide Jerusalem. We want to give them the holy places. And some of our prime ministers want to give up the holy temple. Amazing. There is something in the Jewish people, something of the Galut. We want to appease our enemies. We want to give and give and give and be liked. And the more we gave, the more animosity we got from the Arabs, from the Palestinians, from the world. So, when you think of it, the Norwegian in Bremen, the Swede in Stockholm, he doesn't know the history. If you ask him, which is older, Palestine or Israel? He knows that Palestine, he looks at his maps, Palestine was 2,000 years. What is Israel? It's only 65 years. So who is older? Who has the right for this land? Of course the Palestinians. So what we did, instead of Palestine being history, we brought it to the front. We gave them a state. And now they want more and more and more. So Tzipi Livni is so happy that she managed to convince Abu Mazen to give up the Holy Temple and to get all the Jerusalem, all the east side of Jerusalem. And the question is, on what right are they asking for it? We offered to give them a state. You know, the Egyptians ruled Gaza for 19 years. The Jordanians ruled the West Bank for 19 years. They even did think about, they didn't have the notion to give them a state. And the Arabs did not even think of demanding a state. But part of our people went to the Arabs and told them, you have the Supreme Court of Israel. You could go to the Supreme Court and ask for this, that, and the other. And once we decided to give them, then the question is, if we say, if a Prime Minister of Israel says that the West Bank or Judea and Samaria is occupied territory, then what do you expect the world to say? Get out of there. It is not your land. You admit that it does not belong to you. Get out of there. And this is what's happening with the boycotts. We have academic boycott, economical boycott, political boycott, boycotts all over. We didn't have this in the past. We didn't have this before Oslo. It all started since Oslo and especially in the last 10 years. And you know who were the instigators of boycotts, whether it's academic boycott or other boycotts?
Left.
Israelis
No,
and Jews living in the West. They were the main instigators of White House. I have a radio show, and in one of the radio shows, I encountered a professor from Tel Aviv University. And I was telling her, have you been to Ariel? She said, oh no, God forbid. And I said, you know, it's only 40 kilometers from Tel Aviv. I have an office in Tel Aviv. It takes me about half an hour to get there. But to Ariel, it takes me 40 minutes. And she said, and I told her there's nothing to be afraid of. She said, no, you don't understand me. I will never go to Ariel. I said, why? Are you afraid? She said, no. This is occupied land. You occupied it from the Arabs. And then I told her, where do you teach? She says, in Tel Aviv University. And I said, Tel Aviv University is in Sheikh Mounes, which is an Arab village. Are you going to give it up? Oh no, it's not the same thing. So some of our people distinguish between Hebron and Bethlehem and Ashkelon and Acre. But the Arabs do not distinguish between the two. The Arabs think that Tel Aviv belongs to them. Tel Aviv is only a suburb of Jaffa. Acre belongs to them. In fact, all Israel within the Green Line belongs to them. And when they speak about the end of occupation, they do not mean the end of occupation in Gaza. Nor do they mean the end of occupation in the West Bank. They mean the end of Israel. And some of our people still have a problem in understanding that. Another thing that happened because of the Oslo Agreement, that the Jews have waived their right from now to eternity on the most holy places. Hebron, Bethlehem, Shechem, Beit El, Efrat, all these places that are mentioned in the Bible. And let me tell you that whenever I am abroad, in Europe, in the United States, but especially in Europe, I go and visit the churches because they are like museums. And in every church I see the Bible open, and on one of the pages there is Israel. There is Shechem, there is Hebron. So the Christians do know the meaning of these places. But Shimon Peres, our honorable president, once asked, now what do you want to do in Hebron? When were you lastly in Hebron? When did you go to Bethlehem? We don't need all these places. They mean nothing. I don't know whether President Obama would say, I'll give up California because I haven't been there in the last 40 years. Absurd as it may sound. But this was the attitude, and they promised us, they promised a new Middle East, whereby our sons will no longer go to the army. Our sons will have new horizons, and Israel will live in peace. But let me tell you one thing. I served in Gaza for 17 years. I could walk in the streets of Gaza with uniform, without having weapon on me, I could go to any restaurant I wanted. I could order hummus and falafel, and I would pay them with shekels, and they would say, Naam ya Sidi, thank you very much, sir. Can any one of us do this now? If anybody by mistake went into a Palestinian village, he would be crucified. He would be lynched by mistake. So the situation has really changed enormously and changed the whole position of us in that area. Also, any nation who accepts the fact that another nation has a right on his country delegitimize himself. If we say that the West Bank belongs to the Arabs and that we are occupying that area, which is totally absurd, but Ariel Sharon said that on television. But if we succeed to that, if we say that this is the situation, then we delegitimize ourselves, because that means that we have no right on that area. And today, the Palestinians say openly, we are going to bring to a delegitimization of Israel in a way that more countries are going to accept us than Israel, which is becoming true. There are more countries who would vote for the Palestinian state than for Israel. So we have two nations fighting on the same area. And let me tell you, when I was a kid, I used to ask, why aren't we talking to the Palestinians? And they said, what do we have to talk with them about? They want what we have. But suddenly, we changed course. We decided to talk to them. And you know when? When the Palestinians were in the worst position ever. That was soon after the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, when nobody wanted to have Palestinians because the Palestinians backed Saddam Hussein. And at that time, we approached them and said, we told Arafat, look, you've been a terrorist all your life. You can't even go to the United Nations. They take you from the airport to the United Nations and they take you back. We'll make you a president. You'll have the red carpet. And suddenly a terrorist became a head of state. And this head of state, from the moment he signed the agreement, he did not implement one section of the Oslo Agreement. I've read the Oslo Agreement. It's not one agreement. It's about 5 agreements. Not one section has been carried out by the Palestinians. And especially the main section, that there will be no war and all problems will be solved by negotiation and by peaceful means. He said it all over. But not one section has been implemented or carried out. So the problem is not to make more agreements with the Palestinians. We have enough agreements with them. The problem is to bring them to want peace. But they do not want peace. They want Israel annihilated. They could have had a state a long time ago. A long time ago. And it's a fact that President Obama either does not see the picture in the right way, or he's so committed to the Palestinians and to the Muslims. He's so committed that he doesn't care if Israel vanishes. You know that the Balfour Declaration said that Palestine that is Jordan, what's today known as Jordan, and what was known as Eretz Israel, all this area, from the Iraqi border to the Mediterranean Sea, will be the homeland of the Jewish people. That was in the Balfour Declaration. And when Britain was in control of Palestine, the British mandate, in the British mandate, all this area was meant to be a homeland to the Jewish people. Of course, without prejudicing the people who lived there. This was enacted into the San Remo Agreement, and then later on into the League of Nations, and later on into the United Nations Charter. So it's an official that Israel, that Palestine is the homeland of the Jewish people, not of the Arabs. The Arabs can live there, but they don't have a national right on Palestine. What Britain did in 1946, it took out the Jordan, the whole area, which was called later on Transjordan, and gave it to a prince from Saudi Arabia, Hashemite prince, Abdallah. And it formed a state that was called Transjordan. So Israel was left, or rather Palestine was left with 1/3 of the area that was promised to the Jewish people. Then there was the partition plan, and the Arabs did not accept the partition plan, and therefore 7 armies invaded Israel. And then there was formed, the West Bank was formed by Jordan. It was annexed to Jordan, but nobody accepted it, except for Britain and Pakistan. Pakistan was a Muslim country, and Britain was a protector of Jordan, but even Arab countries did not accept it. And therefore, when Israel fought the war of 1967, which was a defense war, it had more right. I'm not talking about the Bible, I'm talking about international law. It had more right than any other state on Judea and Samaria and Gaza. And then there was after the 1967 war, there was the Security Council Resolution 242 that said in clear words that Israel will not withdraw from all the territories, nor from the territories, but from territories that were gained by this 1967 war. And Israel at that time, or later on, has returned more than 80%, if not more, of the territories to Egypt. And also there was, the whole agreement was against, the agreements were with states, not with Palestinian entity, which did not arise at the time, but it was with states. Therefore, the 242 agreement, the 242 resolution did not give the Palestinians the 1967 armistice borderline. But now they want to go back to the 1967 borderlines, which a foreign minister of ours said once it was the Auschwitz border. And they want Jerusalem as their capital. And not just Jerusalem, but the old part of Jerusalem, which is
has one of the most holy places. Can you imagine the Jewish people without Jerusalem? Can you imagine the Jewish people without the Temple? Temple Mount. All our history is built on Temple Mount. We had in Ariel University a conference, international conference, on the two-state solution. It is obvious that the two-state solution has failed. It is not feasible. The Arabs will not accept anything less than the 1967 borderlines. But when I say Palestinians, I must be more careful. The negotiations are not being carried out with the Palestinians. Abu Mazen does not represent the Palestinian people. He hardly represents the Fatah. Can you imagine that the Arabs negotiating with the Labour Party of Israel for a peace treaty? Actually, we are negotiating with a small part of the Palestinian people. So after we go back to the 1967 borderlines, and we bring in hundreds of thousands of Arabs, suppose we concede to everything they want. We tell them, all right, what do you want? We'll give you everything, just make peace with us. Even if this happens, the Hamas is going to come later on and say, we did not do this agreement. It does not apply to us. And supposing we come to the Hamas and say, well, what do you want? We'll bring in another 500,000 Arabs. And they will sign a treaty with us. Then the jihad will come over and say, wait a minute, this does not apply to us. So there is no ending. There is no ending because we are not negotiating peace with the Palestinian people, as Arafat at the time said, that he represents all the Palestinian people. So the whole thing is not feasible. It cannot come into being. It's a myth. Therefore, we have to think about other solutions, and there are other solutions. And at the conference in Ariel, which took place last month, I promised to bring solution until the next conference, which will take place in December 2011. What we are trying to do is to have a think tank of people who are very much interested in the question of the two-state solution. And we want to make a think tank not only in Ariel, not only in Israel, but also here in the United States. And I've asked Steve Goldberg, who is with us here, to help in this matter. And I believe he's going to say a few words after me. But what we want here is to have a think tank also in Los Angeles, also in New York. It's going to be very important. Every one of us can contribute to that. And we want to find what sort of solution we can get. In Ariel, at the Center for Law and Mass Media, that I am chair, we are conducting research by professors and researchers in many fields. The field of international law, the field of mass media, the field of demography, and other fields as well, like sociology and history. For example, the Arabs speak about being in Palestine since time immemorial. before the Jews. And they say we were always the majority. Where did these Arabs come from? How come Mark Twain in the 17th century said he was in going through Palestine and he didn't see even one person walking in the land? It was a desert. It was a desert with all sorts of malaria and other illnesses. And since the Jews came over and started working very hard on the land, the Arabs poured in. Now you don't become a person who wants national, who wants to be wants to make a state. If you live there 100 years or 200 years, I can tell you, for example, that Jews in Iraq lived there 2,000 years. They were kicked out by hanging 18 Jews in the main public square in Baghdad. Egypt, Morocco. Jews lived there for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. This does not give them national rights. Now, why would the Arabs ask for national rights in the homeland of the Jews? And we should accept it. So what we're trying to do is find other solutions to the Israeli-Arab conflict. And it's not a Palestinian-Israeli conflict. It's an Israeli-Arab conflict. Because when we speak about two states, I would like to see the two states. I don't see two states. I see one state which is totally Palestinian, and another state where you have 1.5 million Arabs living in that state, and they say every day that they are Palestinians. I taught in Haifa University in the Faculty of Law for 7 years. And when you go into the restaurant, you think you are in Damascus. You think you are in Damascus. There's a very strong Arab Arab organization. They put on the Palestinian flag each time they demonstrate. They don't put the Israeli flag, mind you. I mean, you're demonstrating against the Israeli government, okay. But why Palestinian flag? And when they are interviewed, they say openly, we are Palestinians living in Israel. We don't see that we are Israelis. We have nothing to do with Israel. And they sit on a quota of the Jews. Because to study law, you need a very high grade. You need 10.5 grade, which is very, very high. Now, my daughter wanted to study law in Haifa, and she was not accepted because she did not have 10.5. But the Arabs get in with 8.5 and 9 average, because they are Arabs, and you have in a class 1/3 of the students who are Arabs. They can hardly write or read Hebrew, and they want to be lawyers. But when they qualify, they know very well the way to the Supreme Court. Very well. And they cause a lot of headache. So, and they work against Israel. So the solution must be different, not a two-state solution. And let me tell you, I see 4 states. Not 2 states, but 4 states. 4 states that in the eyes of the Arabs will become all Palestinian. One is Jordan. 85% of the population of Jordan are Palestinians. The Queen of Jordan is Palestinian. Jordan is going to become Palestinian within a generation or 2 or 3, I don't know. But in the end, it's going to be Palestinian because that's the trend. Gaza is a state. It's not de jure, it's a de facto, but it's a state. It's Palestinian. The West Bank is Palestinian. The whole world sees the West Bank as Palestine. And what's left? Israel. Israel has 1.5 million Palestinians. And if you think that to change, to destroy the Jewish nation, you need 51%, it's a mistake. All you need is that no prime minister in Israel can be elected without the Arab vote. In other words, if they are in the balance, if you have right and left, and to form a government you need just this little bit, then they're going to tell the prime minister, and there's always going to be a prime minister who will convince us that this is the best thing to do. They're going to tell him, abolish the law of return for the Jews. Or apply the law of return on the Palestinians as well as the Jews. And that's the end. You don't need bullets. They cannot win Israel by force, by military force. What they can do, and they are doing it, and they are applying it. We have 10 members of parliament who are Arabs. They have nothing to do with Israel. They are working as Palestinians, as a fifth column within the Israeli Knesset. And all you need is another 2 or 3 Palestinian Knesset members. They can make all the change. So we are sort of putting, like an ostrich, putting our head in the sand and saying, there's no Arab problem in Israel. If we make a two-state solution, we're not going to have apartheid, we're not going to have one state for the Jews and the Arabs, we're going to have a Jewish state and an Arab state. How wrong it is. So, what I want to do is, I want to invite you to join. You cannot imagine what every one of you can contribute. You don't need to spend more time than is necessary, more time than you can give. And Lily here, Lily, would you like to write? You can register with Lily, anybody who wants to participate in finding a solution of the Israeli-Arab conflict is welcome, more than welcome. And don't say, well, what do I know? I don't know anything about it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a demographer. I'm not a mass media man. You cannot imagine what you can do just with common sense. You can give an idea. You know, when I made my research, my PhD, I used to sit in a cafe and speak to people. And by speaking to them, I got ideas. And it helped me a lot. Sometimes when you discuss things with people, you come with an idea, you say, how is it that I didn't think about it? And so I really would like you to join in this. And I would like also to invite you to the next conference in Ariel University on December 2011. I can tell you that Ariel University is only 26 years old, but we have already 12,000 students, Arabs, Palestinians, Jews, Russian immigrants, Ethiopian immigrants, we have more Ethiopian immigrants than any other university in Israel. Not per capita, more than any other university in Israel. And it is a wonderful atmosphere. I can tell you, I taught in Tel Aviv University for 15 years. And I left Tel Aviv University for Ariel. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.